I'm sure you are very, very familiar with Neanderthal Man. This is National Geographic's cover guy. They love putting him on the cover. Over and over again, what we see about every 9 to 12 months is some new revelation about the Neanderthals. And yet, here's what we know. If you were to actually look at what they consider to be a Neanderthal fossil, not a whole lot of difference between them and us. In fact, on the screen, we've got what they call a Neanderthal skull in the foreground, a modern skull in the background. Aside from the color difference, fossilization, the major difference you see right up here, that thick brow ridge. And because of that, they would say, well, this is our closest ancestor. And so the story that they commonly paint for students is, millions of years ago, we were basically walking on all fours, some kind of ape-like creature. Our food supply started to run down, so we had to get out of the trees and walk across the plains. So we evolved, allegedly, this biped gait. And so in the textbooks, commonly what they'll do is they'll place this guy right beside Homo sapiens, and they say this is our closest ancestor. The problem with that, and the thing that nobody will bring to the attention of students, is all the way back in 1958, a guy by the name of Dr. A.J. Cave, he actually examined the original Neanderthal Valley fossils. And he proved that this was nothing more than a man who had suffered from advanced stages of arthritis. And Ray, if you stop and think about it, today we have things like rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, rickets, all of these different conditions that actually change bone structure, density. Do we know today that those kinds of diseases and conditions exist? Absolutely. In fact, you may know folks that have arthritis. Do we know that they change bone structure? Absolutely. Does that make them a missing link? No. In fact, if you were to suggest that every person in your congregation who has arthritis is a Neanderthal, you probably would not be a popular guy.
The other thing, Brad, too, is that I know a lot of people, and we're in Pittsburgh, and we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I remember some of those Steelers from the 70s with these big brows, sticking out, some of the linemen, and I'm sure if their skulls were put on, their brow would be much more pronounced and bigger than others. And
absolutely.
My family's partially Italian, and we talk about the Roman nose. There are features that people have. How do they justify saying, well, that's somehow more ape-like?
See, that's the frustration on my end. So I've dissected well over 500 to 600 human cadavers. And in doing that, you see all kinds of variation from sizes, thicknesses, densities, and then you add to that the spectrum of age. So, are we dealing with a 7-8-year-old child? Are we dealing with a 78-year-old adult? You start to realize, hey, this is not a missing link category. What this is really is simply a variation due to either age, disease. In fact, I want you to read, a fellow by the name of Jack Kuzo examined the Neanderthal fossils a lot more than I did. Wrote a book several years ago called Buried Alive. And in that book, he said this: you must understand this skull really cries out disease. He says the teeth are badly decayed. The bones of the vault of the skull are extremely thick. He says there are many features that testify of acromegaly, or the excessive secretion of growth hormone in adulthood. That is the real Neanderthal man. It's not a missing link. It's simply a diseased human being. This particular picture really describes what's going on. If you read, this was fairly recently, Discover magazine says the oldest human fossil found outside of Africa suggests our species may have left that continent 200,000 years ago. The two keys that I want you to really hone in on there, this suggests this, or it may have been this. At the end of the day, they don't know. And that's what we're left with. What does the fossil record really show? I'm going to let Jeremy Rifkin tell you. He says what the record shows is nearly a century of fudging and finagling by scientists attempting to force various fossil morsels and fragments to conform with Darwin's notions, all to no avail. Today, the millions of fossils stand as very visible, ever-present reminders of the paltriness of the arguments and the overall shabbiness of the theory that marches under the banner of evolution. You know, Ray, when you really boil it all down, Charles Darwin knew he didn't have missing links. He knew that was the weakness of his theory. Those missing links are still missing today, as is the entire chain.